Hey ladies, I hope you enjoyed your snow day. I enjoyed mine. However, I was a little bit bummed that today was a snow day because this is one of my favorite classes to teach. It's about writing style. We've been doing a lot of spelling and nuts and bolts of grammar, but this is the fun stuff. So I'm going to make it way shorter, and I'm only going to talk about one type of style in detail, but hopefully it's enough for you all to be able to kind of replicate it in your assignment. So if you would turn with me to page 131 of your WriteSource 2000 book. So we're talking about style, and just like we all sort of have a different style of, say, clothing. Well, not on Marcel Mondays, we all have the same style, which is great. But in general, we all wear different clothing. Like, I'm wearing clothing to stay warm. So that says something about my style today. But in the same way, we each have a different way of writing that expresses something very different. For instance, Chloe, we've talked about how you have a style that is very upbeat, a style that is very encouraging and often is in the second person. You say you a lot. I would like you to participate in what I'm writing about. And you have often complex sentences where you put a lot of your big details up front and then you put your small details at the end, but then you'll switch that up. So you have a very flowing, kind of a rich sort of style. Again, that's very encouraging and works to draw that person into some sort of emotion. And then Rachel, your style is very tight in that you always get all the details in there, but you don't do it with too many words. You have very clear sentences. It's a very strong sort of style. And then Madison, you have a style that's similar to what I would like my style to be, or what I try to do in my writing, which is short, simple sentences that say a lot without being flowery. So a lot of times you will use a strong noun, a strong verb, and then pull in a couple other details and kind of leave it at that. And that's actually kind of what I'm going to talk about today is Ernest Hemingway. He used that same sort of style. So we'll talk about that in a second. But on page 131, it talks about different kinds of sentences. So far, we've just talked about what is a sentence. Well, it's a subject and a verb and all the things associated with that. But on page 131, it talks about the loose sentence, the balanced sentence, the periodic sentence, and the cumulative sentence. And this is just talking about where you put the details in those sentences and how that changes the style. But then on the next two pages is what I really enjoy, and this is called modeling. And this is where you choose an author or you choose a series of sentences and you try to replicate that style in your own writing. I'd like to talk about Ernest Hemingway. He's one of my favorite writers because he was a journalist, and his big thing was, write about what you know. And he knew a lot about the dialogue between people. So he would build dialogues, but often those dialogues wouldn't even include verbs or clear subjects sometimes, because he would say out loud anything before he would write it down because he wanted to sound very natural, very normal, something that we would actually hear. For instance, he would write about, two people talking about what they wanted to eat. What do you want to eat? And the next person would say, something good. Because we would say that, but something good isn't even a full sentence. So I think you can kind of get my point. One thing that's a bummer about Ernest Hemingway is he was really a very negative person. He saw a lot of bad things in the world, and that's what he chose to write about. So actually, in choosing an excerpt, I had trouble finding one that wasn't talking about absolutely depressing, horrible things. But this is the introduction to A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. And just see if you can kind of see what I'm talking about in terms of he used very simple sentences. So here we go. It was very late and everyone had left the cafe except an old man who sat in the shadow. The leaves of the tree made against the electric light. In the daytime the street was dusty, but at night the dew settled the dust and the old man liked to sit late because he was deaf, and now at night it was quiet and he felt the difference. The two waiters inside the cafe knew that the old man was a little drunk, and while he was a good client, they knew that if he became too drunk he would leave without paying, so they kept watch on him. Last week he tried to commit suicide, one waiter said. Why? He was in despair. What about? Nothing. How do you know it was nothing? He has plenty of money. They sat together at a table that was close against the wall near the door of the cafe and looked at the terrace where the tables were all empty except where the old man sat in the shadow of the leaves of the tree that moved slightly in the wind. A girl and a soldier went by in the street. The street light shone on the brass number on his collar. The girl wore no head covering and hurried beside him. All right, so hopefully you can see how, again, it's very, very short, nothing flowery. In contrast to him would be someone that I like to talk about in class. Let me hit this real quick. Some windows on my computer are popping up, which would be Faulkner. And he was known for kind of the opposite sort of writing, which is harder writing for me to read anyway. And that is a very flowery, flowing, several complex sentences in a row. He would use a lot of adjectives, a lot of adverbs. He would, instead of speaking in the present tense, he would bring in things from the past and speak about the future. So it wasn't something as if you were experiencing it right there, but it just pulled in a whole lot. Totally different experience. Faulkner actually wrote a lot of the longest sentences that we have in the English language. I think his longest was 1,228 words or something like that. It was a sentence because it is punctuated correctly, but again, it's just a very different sort of style. So what I want you to do as your assignment for this week is choose an author. Maybe it's your favorite author, maybe it's an author that your parents know, but read a little bit of their writing, and hopefully you're already familiar with it, and then try to replicate that in the paragraph that you're going to write this week. I hope this makes sense. So in class, I'll talk to you about, okay, who's the author that you chose? What is their writing like? Why did you choose it? We'll talk about that in class. But then you'll hand in, maybe it'll be a page long, nothing more than a page of the paragraph that I'm going to describe just now. In your history book, on page 75, it talks about a riot that occurred in Kentucky when there was a new Court of Appeals versus an old Court of Appeals. So everybody started fighting about which one they wanted to be in existence. And so the riot, this book explains the riot, and it is nonfiction. It just explains exactly what happened. But I would like you to write a historical fictional account of what happened. And you can do this any way you want. You can write from the perspective of a narrator. You can write from the first person perspective, pretend like you are a character in the event. You can write it from one of the other characters in the event. You could use second person if you wanted. But try to do it using a very distinct style. So maybe try to write it without any adjectives at all. Or maybe try to write it using a ton of description, however you want to do it. Maybe try to include humor in there. If you like a humorous author like Mark Twain, you could do that. Totally up to you. Don't make it more than one page. Don't put too much effort into it. But really show me. What I really want you to see is that you can take one author and then replicate that writing. Because a lot of times, we have habits in our writing or a style of writing that perhaps we'd even like to change. And then the next thing that your book is going to talk about is using strong, colorful words. And you can do this with nouns, you can do this with verbs, and you can do this even with modifiers like adjectives and adverbs. So be sure to read that section too and use strong rather than vague words as you're writing, regardless of what style you choose to use. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to talk to you about. If you have any questions about this assignment, feel free to call me or email me, either one. I'm way more accessible this week than I was last week, so have fun with this assignment. I hope you enjoy it.